Welcome to today's episode of Financial Fluency. Today I have Katie Kozlowski with me, who is a self-love and mindfulness coach and a creator of Loving to Be Me. Thank you for joining me, Katie.
Thank you. I'm so excited. I love talking to people.
So Katie, I have actually been following you for quite a while. I think the first time I saw you was a really beautifully branded video that Timothy Jane Graham had done.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes. We did that. Interestingly, we did that a couple of years ago, and it's so fascinating how you go on the journey, because we did that back then, and then I was like, I can't use that, and went really far away from it, and now here I am. I've landed back on that video, and I use it again. So, it's on my websites, it's everywhere.
Yeah, I think it was a couple of years ago when I saw it, and I was like, oh, that seems like a really interesting person. And we're in a few other groups together. And you also do voice acting, is that correct?
I do.
Okay. So I'm really interested and excited about all these things that you do. But I also know that you had a big incident. I'm looking at your bio here. Should we start back with the taxi accident?
That's
your story.
That's a great place to start, just because it's kind of like a lot of people ask me, how did you get here? Like, why do you do this? And it actually gives you like a nice cohesive picture of who I am and why I do all the different things I do. I have a background in performing. I'm trained as an actress. I've been singing and performing my whole life. And then to support myself, I was doing all these side jobs, and I got sort of sidetracked in the liquor industry. And while I was in the liquor industry, I kind of, got sucked into, I was drinking a lot, and I was like, I was really in a bad way, because I was in some not so great relationships and all of these things I was sort of spiraling downwards. And then this one night I got hit by a taxi, and it was like one of those nights where like you can't make it up. My boyfriend had stood me up. I was just like the lowest of the low. I had texted him so many times. My phone was dead. And I literally felt so worthless that I started thinking like, gee, if I died, would anyone notice? Like, who would care if I died? Like, I literally felt that I was that sad. And then I got hit by the car, like literally seconds later. Like, I literally thought, gee, would anyone care if I die? And then it was like, do you want to find out? Do you want to see? Like, boom.
But you didn't step out. It wasn't on purpose. You didn't step in front of the car.
Like, gee, I couldn't possibly, the subconscious is crazy.
Yeah.
And so I kind of think that in some ways I saw him coming. Like, I knew that car was coming. I thought to myself, he sees me, but I think at the same time, I was like, I don't care if he sees me or not. It sounds so much darker than it was, but it was like in an instant, it was just like a flash. And I think that that's one of those things that's one of the reasons why I do this and I teach this, is because like we have these thoughts of like, yesterday I ran a red light and I was like, whatever, it's one red light, and I'm just going to bust on through it, whatever, and then I got pulled over by a police officer. And what he said to me was like, please be careful. It's never worth it. And I thought, you know what? It's not worth it. But so that's basically what happened. I got hit by this car. I had a chance to sort of reassess my life and reassess the way I was living and thinking about myself. And after that happened, I quickly got on this track of self-love and mindfulness and awareness, and even things like, what are you thinking? Like, if you're ever thinking, gee, I wonder if people would care if I was dead, that's not a good sign. It's not good.
Yeah. Do you mind if I ask a few questions here?
Yeah.
What was your job in the liquor industry?
I was a brand ambassador. So I was like the face of the brand. I was like famous. Like, I was talk about being highly regarded. Like, I was one of the most sought after brand ambassadors. Everybody wanted me to work for them. I was like the best. And it was because I was personable. All the reasons why I'm good at what I do now, friendly, outgoing, nice, attractive too, obviously, but it was all that, all of that stuff. So that's what I did. I was the face of the brand. My job was to go into bars and buy people drinks.
Party. Woohoo.
Party. Yeah. To party.
Yeah. So on the night that you got hit by the car, had you been drinking then?
No, that's what's so interesting is I did, that was the one night, because my boyfriend stood me up. I was so depressed that I was like, I can't even drink. I'm so depressed. I don't even want to drink. Like, normally there was one night, and this is insane. Nobody should be able to do this. I drank 11 scotches. That's like a bottle of whiskey.
Were
And
you a whiskey ambassador?
I worked for a Scotch company, and so we would just drink, and I wouldn't just drink, I would eat too. So like, you know, that's the thing that's so interesting about it. And that's another reason why I teach this stuff, is like, you have to be careful what you wish for. And also, you have to be mindful of what you're getting in exchange for what you're doing, because on paper, I had one of the best lives. People are like, that sounds so fun. I drank for free. Every restaurant I went in, somebody gave me, they opened a bottle of Silver Oak. They, lobster, New York strip. Like, I ate dinners that were thousands of dollars for free. People just threw stuff at me. I had all the attention in the world. Like, I was the darling of Manhattan. You know, every bar I walked into, Katie's here. What do you want? I got so much for free, but it was alcohol. It was relationships with men that were like not stable, sometimes married. You know what I mean? There was like a flip side to it. But no, that night I was like, I can't even drink. Like, no, I ate a cheeseburger because I loved this place's cheeseburgers, but I didn't drink. I was sober. I was like, totally knew what I was doing.
Wow. Yeah, I like thinking back to my college self. If someone had told me that job existed, I probably would have been like, oh my gosh, that's the most amazing job. I totally would have wanted it. But yeah, as an adult who has to watch what I eat and drink
Right.
to feel like capable the next day, that would be.
And make like, you know, and that's sort of the platform. That's one of the reasons why I landed on Loving to Be Me instead of all these other things, and why I teach that. Because to me, it's so simple. It's like, are the things you're doing positive and loving, or are they destructive? Because I think that honestly, like so many of us are programmed to do things, and we're not paying attention, and we're doing things for the wrong reasons, and we end up hurting ourselves. You know what I mean? It's like, once you start being conscious of like, is this loving? Like, is this helping me? Then you sort of get like, no, this relationship, this job, this whatever, this food, this drink makes it easier.
Mm-hmm. So how long did it take you from the car accident time to start this as a business?
So that was I was about 30, and I'm 37 now. So somewhere in between the two, I went through that bit of a transformation. And, you know, I started just with general healing. Sorry, I have a doggy, and he's making his presence known. I love him. He wants to get out. This is the thing. He wants to get out. He can't get out. Come here, buddy. So 7 years total. And over the period of time, I did a lot of personal development work first. And it wasn't until I was given sort of like the tools to implement it myself, where I saw that I could help other people with it. You know what I mean? It took me a while to actually go from, and it was actually on accident, because I started sharing people, like the car accident, right? It was an accident. And I started sharing with people what had happened to me, and sort of like the snippets of my story. And it began to like inspire people, you know, and I thought, okay, maybe I can do something with this, and I can turn this into a positive thing. My intention was never to build an empire and be like this massive, famous healer or whatever. Like, my intention was just to like make something out of the fact that I had such a mess, you know, just to sort of like use it for good. And I think that that's one of the things that we all sort of struggle with, because so many of us on paper, our lives look awful. You know, like we end up like, you know, which we're talking about money on your show, right? And what you do is money, right? And I ended up in debt. Like, that's one of those things that kind of came with all of this. And on paper, it's like, sometimes it looks so disastrous and sad and dark. And you're like, you want to find a reason or like justify it, you know, like you want to be like, well, this bad thing happened to me because of blah, blah, blah. And you want to like make it into something beautiful. And I think that was where I started, was like, how can I make something magical out of this like awful, awful, awful thing I did to myself? And then I built on it because I got the tools. And then I began to get more sort of like scientific and experimental and take it further and actually create the systems that go really deep. So it's cool. It's taken me like 7 years though.
Mm-hmm. And in the meantime, were you acting or doing voice acting through?
Yes. So
the
yeah,
brand
so
ambassador
that was
and all
kind
of
of like the
this?
miracle and the magic of all of it is that after I got hit by the car, that was in October. So I got the message and I was like, oh, this is so bad. Do you know how mad I'd be if I died walking home from a liquor promotion? Like, do you know how pissed off I'd be if I gave my life and I had to die doing something that made me miserable? Like, I was really upset, but I still financially didn't know how to get myself out of it because I had been supporting myself. Yeah, I was an actress, but I had been supporting myself as a spokesmodel for years. And so I had so much of my worth tied into like my looks and selling alcohol and all of this stuff that I didn't know how I was going to sort of transition out of it. It's kind of like if you're in an abusive relationship or you're married and you want to get a divorce and you don't know how to take care of yourself. Like it was kind of like that. And I was terrified to leave my job because I knew like, how am I going to pay my bills and stuff like that if I stop doing this thing, like if I stop doing what I've known for money. And so when I got hit by the car, like I didn't leave at first, but I slowly, like I mentally left. You know how you do that sometimes and you start messing up, you start like making mistakes and you don't care anymore and you're sort of like checked out, but you're still going to work. I started doing that. And, I also do a lot of healing work. And so in one of my healing sessions, I was like, that's it. I'm ready to let go of this job. Like I need help though. I need some sort of like universal support. And I got fired from my job during the healing session. Like during the session, I was like, my intention is to leave my job. Like I'm just ready. And then I got off the table and I checked my phone. I looked at my phone and I was like, oh my God, there is a call from HR on my phone. They're firing me. And the woman that did my session was like, that's amazing. Like, yes, it works. I was terrified.
And you're like, wow,
I'm like, this is too fast. Like, this isn't what I meant. I didn't mean like fire me today. I meant like help me slowly, gently ease out. But what ended up happening is the voiceover work then began to pick up. And I remember being so amazed because I was like, wow, you mean I can actually make a living doing this? Like I can actually earn serious money. And I'd never had that because I'd always been like a spokesmodel or I was like sampling liquor. I mean, I made a lot. I made like $75,000 a year as a spokesmodel. Like I made a lot of money, which was fantastic, but it was tied into sort of like stuff that I didn't want anymore. Mm-hmm. So I had to sort of ease my way out of it. And when I did, I went from, doing the liquor stuff to doing mostly voiceovers, to then sort of taking the liquor stuff away and replacing it with the other work I did. And then the voiceovers was sort of like a common thread that never went away. And it just keeps growing. And it's amazing because it's something I love. And it's actually another, I love doing it because it's so fun to sort of see the jobs that I book, the jobs that I do, because my voice is tied to, so many things that children hear, or, I did a spot for Play-Doh, right? And like Play-Doh was all about, the line I say is open up a can of imagination. And I'm like, that's so me. Like, that's so what I would tell a human, like a grown up, so there's still overlaps, and which is one of the reasons why I still do it.
Okay. You've been the voice of Play-Doh. Who else have you been that we might know? I'm just so curious.
Yeah. So I've done cartoons. I've been Nickelodeon, Peter Rabbit. There's a cartoon series. I was the mom on that. I was Mrs. Fidget.
My kids totally watch that. They're like,
really?
Peter Rabbit.
Yes!
That one? Run for your life. Yes. Oh my gosh. We totally watched that
I'm
series.
In your house. Okay.
On Netflix. Oh, you're the mom. Oh my gosh. I love the mom.
Rabbit. So anytime when you go and listen to it now, you'll recognize it. Be like, I know that voice.
My favorite, can I tell you my favorite real quick? It was the plum, the perfect plum, where the mom goes and gets the plum that Peter wanted to get from Mr. McGregor's garden. Do you remember that one? And then at the end, she makes him a plum pie.
Oh, yes, the pie. We make the pie. Yeah. See, and that's what I mean. It's like doing that, like children, like I just love that I was the mom and the mom's teaching the lessons. There's one where like Peter loses the mom's like special stuff. Like she has like sacred things in a box and Peter loses it. And it's like all about, you know, letting go of memories. And so, yeah, so like Peter Rabbit, tons and tons of just all kinds of brands of different things. Trying to think of like, those are like the fun ones though. I've done a lot of animation and kids toys and things like that, just because I'm so like, I'm creative. I'm like, you know, I'm expressive, and I don't have an issue with sort of being silly, but I also have, I think honestly, because of all the training I've done with like NLP and the energy work too, and understanding sort of compassion. I do a lot of like hospital spots and things like that as well, because it's like an energy. It's like an understanding, you know, just like I would talk to a client that has been through something massive, you know, it's the same sort of concept. And then it actually comes in handy with doing meditations as well, because I have, you know, I've got extra sort of insight and skills and really great equipment to record meditations. And sometimes I listen to my meditations, I'm like, that sounds so good. So, you know, your training is never wasted. That's what I always say.
That's good to know. Actually, I do. My husband and I were both trying to do a bit more guided meditation these days, so I might go download some of your meditation.
Yeah. I have one that, you know, I have a couple, and some of them are free and some of them are not, but they're good. Like they really are good. And I would hope they're good after all these years. But having the sort of access to being comfortable with speaking and all of those things, it's so nice to know that, you know, a lot of times people will look at their careers and say, and I've done this myself and gone, well, you know, I do this, and this, and I can't put them together. Like they don't fit together. Or I did this and now I'm not doing it anymore and it was a waste. And it's like, well, actually it never is. Because my college education, even my time in the liquor industry, like I learned a lot about communication. You know, I learned a lot about being fearless, because, you know, there are a lot of times, hi, would you like to try this? No. Okay. You know, like it took me so long to be able to, it's terrifying. You're like standing in a liquor store. You've seen these girls, right? They're like at the liquor store, maybe you haven't, but in certain states it's legal. And they're like,
with an open,
bottle open. Would you like to try a new rum? You know, like asking, do you want to try sampling? And, you know, people going like, no. Like, okay.
I have to drive home.
Right. I know. I've heard some people say, I'm an AA. And then he like buys a, you know, and they're lying to you. You just, yeah.
That is interesting. Huh. So, okay. So connecting that into the other work that you do now. Okay. Let me just backtrack for a second. Before the accident, before getting into the liquor industry, it sounds like you felt like you were being destructive with that job in the liquor industry. Was there anything prior to that that you think drew you into that brought you there?
Yeah,
self-image?
Totally. So yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Everything's so deeply interwoven with people. Like I teach people when I'm working with people, I teach like these concepts of like, let's build the roadmap of your life where we see like everything is connected. And, you know, going back to the beginning and sort of looking at connecting the dots of like, where did these things come from? And I grew up, ironically or not so ironically, with a ton of alcoholism in my family. So alcohol was very valuable. That was like gold, the alcohol. And so what did I do? I got a job in the most valuable thing that I knew growing up as a kid, alcohol.
That's so interesting. Where some people would be like finance or like doctor.
No, because I was like, this is where the money is. Like, this is what people love, right? People love booze. Like, and also I grew up around, you know, just parties and dinner parties and entertaining. And like my mother loved to throw parties, and it was very social. Like I just grew up around it. And so it was very natural for me. And I was also a cocktail waitress, and it just sort of happened because somebody said to me one day, like, you are so right for this job because you're beautiful and you're friendly. and like you're hot, so people will buy stuff from you. This job was, you were made for this job.
You
And it
get
was
big
one,
tips.
yeah. And the thing is, it was one step away from, and it ties into the Facebook ad thing that we were talking about, because it's like one step away from prostitution, at least in my eyes, because I was still like, I was everything you could ever imagine, right? Like I was a Morganette, which meant I dressed like as a pirate wench, right? And I just walked around. I was like the Bass Bureau girl, and I wore the schoolgirl uniform. I was the girl that wore the uniforms, a Jaegerette. I wore bustier and knee highs and an orange wig. Like that was what I did. And I think it was really interesting because one, I learned at a young age, like alcohol is very important. And two, like use what you got, right? And people used to tell me all the time, like, you're really hot. Like you could do, this is so stupid, but it's true, right? Like you would be so good in Playboy. Like, could I shoot you for Playboy? I got asked that a lot. And the thing is, I could have done that. Like, and it was like the one thing that I never wanted to do.
So did the people asking you that actually work for Playboy? Or were
No, they were just people that like
they
thought
just
that
want you to take your clothes off and take
say
pictures?
stupid crap to you when you're young and you're naive. And yeah, and I look at all of this now because I'm like going, how do you connect the dots, and what are the messages? And I think it actually is a crucial piece of my sort of my personal heritage, because I learned, like, I defined my value. We're talking about money, right? And so I learned that like there were two ways that brought me money that were very valuable. I had some great assets, right? One, the alcohol, right? I had this massive connection, and I had the biggest liquor collection you've ever seen. I must have had 300 bottles valued at maybe $10,000 because I had collected all this alcohol. I would bring guys over, look at my liquor collection. You know what I mean? Like, it's a weird thing. And then the being attractive, like that's a gold mine. People tell you that, right? Like, oh, you're pretty, you get anything you want for free. These are like psychological things that people tell you. So I mean, you can take that, you can carry that all the way back to when I was a child and I saw it. And so it was sort of like a natural progression of, oh, you're an actress. Oh, you're going to need a side job. You're really good at this. You should just do this. And not only was I good at it, and I got free booze, which was cool. I got a lot of attention, and I got paid really well, because when you're 21 starting out, where else are you going to find a job that pays you $45 an hour?
Yeah, not many.
No.
Yeah.
Like it was bank, but not the kind of bank that I want to make now. Just different.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I was looking at your bio here too, talking about helping other people work through self-value images, self-worth, and how does that translate now? Like how you feel about the saleability of your image and alcohol and all of that.
Right.
Yeah. What's the shift been to
well,
today's Kate?
Yeah, I mean, it's been fascinating because I really struggled with how to translate it. I had a hard time going, this one thing doesn't seem as valuable. It's interesting. Like the thing that, and that's why I teach it now, because you would think, because I've seen it all. I had a millionaire boyfriend. I traveled. I flew first class. I stayed at the 5-star resorts. I went to the Kennedy's house. Like I've been all over. I've seen it all. And the one thing that I had that had no value was me. And that's why I call it loving to be me. And that's why I teach, what I teach. And I don't call it anything but that, because as far as I'm concerned, that's like the hardest thing in the world is you can get jobs, you can sell things, you can do this and that. But like, if you don't value yourself, there's going to be a huge gaping hole in your life, no matter what you're doing. And so it was hard for me to translate that at first, because it was, they say like, you're here to heal like your biggest wound, right? Or what you teach is what you're working on. And that was my biggest thing, was like, if you take away like the liquor, and if you take away, all of the acting and the this and the that, and I just teach like self-value, Like, how much is that worth? And I had a hard time with putting a value or an amount on love, because love is free. And so what I've had to kind of finally understand is that what I offer that I think is very different than what a lot of other people offer is that I'm not selling you anything, but I'm offering you an opportunity to um, take a system that you can use, the same system I use. So I'm giving you, I'm not selling you something like I'll heal you, or, you know, I'll teach you how to make $1 million or blah, blah, blah. No, I teach you one thing and one thing only, and that is how to value yourself. Because I know that that's kind of the most important lesson. Because once you get that, then all the other stuff, anything you want just is there.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? But it was
Yeah.
hard. It was challenging at first.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that is such an issue for women who are born with a lot of beauty, is that it either fades with time or it can be taken. You know, your car accident, you could have absolutely smashed your face.
I
You
know.
could have had hugely reconstructed surgery. You could have looked entirely different and lost that asset that you valued so much and that everyone else valued in you so much.
Right.
Yeah. And then what is left
Right.
without that? I mean, it is part of our sort of patriarchal sexist society too, is putting the value on the body, the appearance of women, and not the internal part of us.
Right. Like the
I mean,
heart and the soul. You know, it's so interesting too, because when I was, I grew up, my sister is like gorgeous. Right. And I grew up being like, I just grew up around like being told how beautiful we were. And I think I was like a freshman in high school, and we went off to like summer camp and we wrote a musical, and I wrote this character. We had, the storyline was there was an earthquake, and it was like what happened during the earthquake. And my character, ended up, I probably have a picture somewhere, she ended up with a huge gash on her face. And I wrote a song about that I'm no longer beautiful and I've lost everything. This is like, I was like, what, like 14. And this is what I wrote. Like, this is subconsciously what was going on inside me, because I was so confused. And it actually has always confused me, because I've been like, what I struggle with the most is that there's two versions of me, you know what I mean? And I think there's two versions of all of us. There's the outside person that you see, and then there's the inside person. And it's cool when they match and you're like, oh, I totally get this person. Like, I see them and they're the same on the inside. But people come to me and they're like, I don't get it. You're like really like attractive and pretty, and like you look like maybe you could be a dumb blonde, or like maybe you could be this or that. But then I get to know you and you're like this deep well of information. Like, you're so deep and smart and like loving, and you're like nothing like the way you look. Like, how does that work? And it's confused me until it stopped confusing me, because it's like we're all sort of oxymorons in some ways. We're always going to contradict ourselves. And I think that's kind of like the beauty of it. And I think anything like money, learning how to get out of debt, everything is sort of an oxymoron, because you think, at least this is what I experienced, you know, I went into debt. What was the first thing I did? I panicked. What was the second thing I did? I clawed and I tried as fast as I could to get out. You know, and I was like, I've got to get out. I've got to get out. And all that did was perpetuate and make it bigger. You know, it like made the space bigger. The panic of like, I can't do this. I have to get out of this. I have to, you know, it just slowed me down. Until I went, okay, like here, I'm calm down. System, very slowly, I'm going to figure this out. Every day I'm going to do something to take care of it, like little steps. No panic, no. And also accept that, guess what, I'm in debt, and the only way to get out of debt is to accept I'm in debt. I had to sort of admit it, you know, like I went through that day where I totaled up all my credit cards, and I was like, here's the number. It is not a good number. I do not like this, but it's mine and I have to face it. It's the same sort of thing with like yourself and your value, I think, where you have to, at some point, you have to take inventory and have courage and be like, this is me. This is where I am, and I'm not going to try and escape it. And then once you do that, then it happens really easily. You know what I mean? Instead of feeling like you're trapped, or you're like, I've got to figure myself out, or I've got to make this work, or I've got to make it fit, because I tried that. I put on weight. I dyed my hair brown, you know, like I wore no makeup. I wore a potato sack. I wore a brown paper bag over my head. It didn't matter. People were like, you're still you. You
Mm.
know, like you can't change yourself on the inside.
What was it that got you into debt in the first place?
So the debt was honestly, it was business investments. I um well, it was like personal development business. And what I actually say is that I don't recommend people do it this way because it is difficult. But basically what it was I was in trouble. I had just been hit by a car. And I knew that I was personally in a lot of trouble. So the first thing I did was I started kind of investing in personal development, doing trainings and workshops and healings. And then it was like, oh, I'll do this. Oh, I'll go to this retreat. Oh, I'll get a business coach. Oh, I'll get Timothy to take my pictures. I need that. Oh, I need that. Oh, I need that. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, I have spent like $60,000 and I'm not making enough to cover it. And that's not to say, it's interesting because people would say, oh, you have a money block. You have like a poverty mindset. And I'm like, no, I actually don't. I make a lot of money, but I over invested before I was ready, before I had the structures in place. It's not that I don't know how to make money. It's that I got ahead of myself.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I want a business. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I bought all this stuff, but I didn't have like, you know what I mean? It's like I bought a house, or like I bought the paint and the ladder and the the flowers and the furniture, and then I was like, okay,
I don't have a house.
and now I can't afford. And ironically, I went through this actually, and now I can't afford the house.
Yeah.
But I have all this stuff to go in the house.
You know what? I'm so glad that you brought this up because I do feel like there are a lot of people who see the online world and are like, okay, I want to make money online. I have some skills of some kind. I'm not sure how to translate them into what will make the money, but I see this other person over here
Right.
and they say they're making six figures. So I want them to teach me how to do it. Even though they're in a different industry, it's a different niche. They've never done what I want to do, and pay them tens, sometimes even 20s of thousands of dollars to get started without having clients and an audience and the thing, like you're saying, something to sell even sometimes. Like I've seen people really go massively in debt ahead of time. I actually just finished Jen Sincero's book. Did you read the I'm a Badass at Making
No, I
Money?
haven't read it, but I know everyone loves it.
Well, part of what she talks about is when she went $85,000 in debt.
Oh, good. So I'm in good company. I
You're
know
in
there's
good
a lot of
company.
people. There's people who have done it, and that's why I'm like, and that's the thing in itself where I'm like, just don't do it, because then they read the stories and they're like, well, so and so did it and it worked for them, so I'm gonna do it. I'm like, slow your roll.
But yeah,
Cool to say though.
well, and Jen does talk about her struggle with, she was trying to do it. She was following someone who's like a luxury lifestyle coach. And she was trying to do Write Your Damn Book. And she did manage to start making money in there, but really it was her books, her own books, becoming New York Times bestsellers and stuff. And if you look at the number of books that come out every year and the number that are New York Times bestsellers, she's definitely in the minority of people who manage to make a lot of money that way.
Right.
So yeah, but it was interesting. I mean, that was the part of the book that gave me pause when I went to write the review, which I haven't written yet, because part of me is like, people who come to me and who've joined my programs, a number of them are these exact people who are like, I just spent $60,000 on this, and this, and the money's not coming in. Like, I'm panicking. My family's freaking out at me because I made all these investments. And so I have a hard time being like, yes, go buy that book and do what it says, because I don't think that works for everybody. I think it really depends. I mean, and there's another part of it, especially with women and visibility. I mean, I do feel like a third of us have had some sort of sexual trauma in our lives, and visibility is so hard to come and do. I mean, I've worked through that myself. I was sexually abused as a child. Putting my face somewhere where people can see it and criticize it, and maybe the family of my abuser, I mean, all those thoughts go through your head, and that's a third of us women, at least. Sometimes I think it's even more, deal with some kind of trauma to overcome in order to do this. And the person you're following may not have had that
Right.
same issue. They may be able to very easily put their face and their bodies and themselves out there. But I do think that's something that's different for us women than men is, I mean, like you were saying, your assets to sell liquor, dressing up in those outfits. I'm sure you looked amazing. You looked adorable. I'm sure you were extremely attractive to all of the men who wanted to buy liquor. And it, the whole situation helped with that. But if you had an issue with men looking at you in a sexual way, which you may even, maybe I have no idea, but
I think subconsciously I was like, wait, this doesn't seem right. And that's why I was so upset all the time.
yeah, and that could make a huge like cognitive dissonance for someone working in the job that you were working in. And it could make coming out of that and trying to market yourself. And nowadays, this whole thing of you are your brand, us being our brand, us needing branded videos and beautiful photography and all these things, there are a lot of people that's really hard for.
Right. Well, and the thing that's why it's so interesting is, and I think it's the fact that you brought up Timothy's video is so funny because that was the first thing I did was I hired Timothy to do photographs and video, right?
Mm-hmm.
I had top of the line branding. I mean, she's brilliant. She's amazing. I spent so much money, not only on the pictures and the video. I spent $1,000 renting a carousel for an hour. I spent probably $1,000 on the wardrobe itself, getting all the pieces together. I mean, that alone was probably like maybe $10,000 that I spent between the photographs and the video and all the stuff when all is said and done. And I did that before I was ready. And God bless her for being the brilliant genius that she is, because I can still use it. And now I'm ready to use it, because what she did was she actually was so smart that she saw me before I saw me. Like she knew somehow between her and spirit and whatever, like it timed itself out where I go, you know what, I'm a ding dong. I don't recommend people do it this way because I do everything backwards. It's weird, but I feel like, sometimes like I can see the future and I'm like, oh, I need that. I am buying things that I need like 4 years in the future, in the present with money I don't have. And I don't think that I don't recommend it unless you're wildly skilled and you know what you're doing. Even I didn't believe it though. And, I have a teacher, right? And one of the people that I invested so much money in, this spiritual teacher to help me. And he's amazing. He helped me so much. But I sat down with him one day and he was like, faith is nothing if it's blind. Meaning like if you're doing everything with your hands over your eyes, just like hoping and praying that it's going to work out, you're in big trouble because you're creating something you're investing in something you can't even see. And that's what I kept doing was I would do things and I didn't actually see, I knew it was there, but I didn't have the courage to see it or believe it. And so I created this huge debt. I believe everything happens for a reason. Everything's fine. It's like, the debt's being taken care of and I'm moving forward. And ironically, when I hired my business coaches, it was to write my damn book, which is just what, because I was convinced, and maybe I'm still convinced that I have a New York Times bestseller and I haven't published it yet still. And the thing is, that was why I got into it. Cause I was like, I want to do something with my life. And then all of a sudden, all these things came. The best way to explain it is Dr. Seuss has this book called The Star-Bellied Sneetches. And if anybody listens to this and like digs this conversation and wants to sort of like wrap your mind around it through the eyes of Dr. Seuss, read that book because it's all about the guy comes to town. You got the star-bellied Sneetches and the Sneetches without the stars. The ones without the stars want the stars, so they pay the guy to put the stars on. Then the guy takes the stars off, then he puts them back on. And by the end, the guy leaves. He's got a truck full of money and the Sneetches are right back where they started.
Yeah. I remember that story.
Doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is cool. I mean, it's okay.
It's a journey. The Sneetches have hopefully learned something from having stars put on them.
Oh, they have. I mean, that's the thing. At the end, they're like, they've learned that they don't need stars on their bellies to matter. And they're all the same. So that's why I say to people, like, look, if you want to get started, don't go out and buy a Lexus because you think you need a Lexus to matter. Maybe maybe love yourself enough to get what you can afford and know that you're important, whether you have a Lexus or you drive a Chevy HHR, which is what I drive. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I could feel like a loser. And sometimes I'm like, I have the dorkiest car. And I'm like, but you know what? Who cares? Because my car is not me. These luxury people teach you need a Lexus. I don't think so. You know what you need? You need like a Lexus of a soul, of a heart, and then who cares about the rest?
Do you live in Manhattan still?
No, I'm in Connecticut.
Okay, because I was like, actually, I'm shocked you even have a car if you're in Manhattan.
I had a car the whole time. I was a ding dong. I kept a car in Manhattan, and my cars kept getting smashed. Like, oh my god, like,
Oh, okay.
hilarious.
Yeah, because I was thinking the people I know who have cars in Manhattan usually garage them, and I'm like, that's more like your car rent for your car is like my house payment here in Arizona.
Right? No. I parked it on the street for free, and
but then you have to get up and switch sides. Oh my gosh. When we used to tour, my husband and I were in indie bands for many years. And when we used to tour, like New York was the worst place to bring our tour van because it was so hard to park.
Right.
And then you'd be up, you'd get back to someone's apartment to stay with them like at 2 or 3 in the morning, park it. And then at 6, you had to get up and move it to the other side of the street. And I was like, I got so many tickets in New York. I hated it.
Oh my God. Why do you think I left? I mean, that was one of the reasons why when it came time to leave, I'm like, I am fine with this. I want a driveway.
Yeah. Somewhere to park.
Like driving to the store. It's just a different mindset. But I just feel like there's so many people out there that are overspending in an effort. And this is also what I teach because, it's in all my programs. It's in everything. Like, please don't spend all your money trying to find something outside of yourself that will never fix it. Because all those things I bought, it didn't solve my issue. You know what I mean? Like, I spent so much money on trying to fix my problem. And I would go to coaches. Oh, well, you have this, you need this. I'll teach you this, blah, blah, blah. But the biggest thing was that myself didn't feel valuable when it came to this work because I only knew all that other stuff, So it didn't matter how much money I paid somebody else. I had to it's the Wizard of Oz. I had to figure it out for myself.
The Wizard of Oz.
I'm the Wizard. Yeah, I'm like Peter Rabbit, the Wizard of Oz. Star-bellied Sneetches. Go get your children's stories. Simplify, and you will learn. It's weird. Uh-oh. Come back. Are you frozen? You can't oh, she's gone. There you go.
Are you still there? Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Right when you said that, like all the electricity in my house like closed off for a second and I had to wait until the internet kicked back up. That was weird.
Whoops,
Simplify.
sorry.
Well, I think it was like an exclamation point. It was like lightning striking on children's stories and simplify. I think that's really
yeah, that's a message for me. I do that sometimes, because I also work with energy. It sounds dorky to be like, that's an energy thing, but it is kind of like truth resonates so powerfully that it does. I've had people's like phones shut down, like wires go, and it's only because it's like so true. Like, it's the Wizard of Oz. Like, anything you're looking for, you have inside, and you don't need to go into debt to try and find it.
I think that's a really great message. That's going to be a quotable from this interview, I think.
True, though. I mean, it really is true, and that's why I'm sure that's really what Jen and Sinchera was saying too. I'm sure is like, look, it worked for her because eventually it's like, like it's the secrets of the universe, right? Like, once you find it inside yourself, it shows up. But otherwise, you're just like going to be constantly searching for it outside of yourself. And that is that takes money. And so that's why I said earlier, it's kind of like you can scramble and try and get out of it, and it just makes it worse. You just throw more and more money at the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And then the problem gets bigger and bigger. Whereas if you're like, whoa, I really have this problem. I'm going to like just sit with that and not try and like escape it. Or like, this is my body. I'm going to just like enjoy it, you know, instead of buy fancy clothes or whatever. I mean, that's how I ended up in debt, which I just kept shiny objects, courses.
It's easy nowadays. It's at our fingertips all the time. It's all there. Pretty much anything you want to spend money on, someone will take your money for it.
Right. And that's why sometimes I have a hard time, because I think that's on the flip side of it. When you've been burned, it's the same thing with love, right? Like if someone breaks your heart, then it's hard to be in a loving relationship sometimes. Like I've so many times been like, I just got sold a bill of goods. You know, like I don't like pressure. I don't like being manipulated. And I would never do that to anyone. Because I know what that feels like. But I think that when it comes to sales and running a business, like you have to learn that, that didn't want to come out, learn that at some point you have to charge or own your value. And just like you wouldn't keep, well, I mean, you might, because I did it, but like, at the end of the day, you don't want to stay in an abusive relationship, right? Because it's beating the guy or the girl, depending on who you are, is beating you up, or a job that's beating you up. You don't want to do that to yourself in business either.
It is hard. I struggle with that too, mainly because I have seen people who come to me have had problems with finances, and I have a hard time charging for things too. I end up trying to do things like, let me figure out how to monetize my podcast so that I don't have to charge anybody money. Let me figure out how to, like do advertising or do something else, work with a PR company, find some way to not directly charge people, because that doesn't feel fantastic.
Right. It's interesting, isn't it? Because it's like, you don't want to, I often think of it like, I don't, I never want to be like rubbing salt on someone's wound. And I think that that's how we're taught to market, is find the pain point. And like, it's like, find the pain point and put some pressure on it. That's kind of what we're taught. Like you want to search for the weak spot, and like, that's where you go. And I flipped it to kind of like, no, I like to think of it as like the chink. That's like the chink in the armor, like the hole in the wall, like it's all protected. And then there's that one space where you can slip in. I like to just like find that and then kind of slip in there and see what I can do by finding that open space, as opposed to like making sort of like an ouchie,
Yeah. Well, I do think that, storytelling and you being a voice actor, I mean, like sharing stories is where we connect. I much prefer like connection style marketing to pain point marketing.
Right.
I mean, and with stories too, I feel like if people connect with the story, then they're interested. And if the story doesn't connect with them, then they just can sort of like move themselves away, opt themselves out. It's not for them. And you were like, I loved you telling all of your story through all of this. It was really, it was a lot of stuff I didn't know about you, and I followed you for a while, so I feel like I learned a lot here.
Well, I always learn, and I think it's that's what I mean. It's like the kind of thing where if we spend our lives judging people on the packages on the outside, we miss so much of what's underneath, and that's kind of my job. It's
Shrek.
Is that a Shrek thing? I'm like a living, breathing freaking Disney movie. I talk like one.
My daughter's in Shrek the Musical right now, and that's part, because Fiona's the princess, so he judges her, and he's the ogre, so he gets judged at first. But actually, there's a prince inside of him, and she's actually an ogre at night, and
I love it, and that's why I love children's stories, because it's so simple, and we all get it. We look at it, and we're like, oh my God, I know that, I remember that, and we love it so much because, like, wouldn't it? That's why we fall in love with people, right? Is when people look at us and they see beyond, they just like know who we are, and that's kind of my mission and goal, is to teach people how to do that for themselves, to just be like, look at the, I remember the very first day I sort of caught my reflection, and I was like, I love you, like, and genuinely, not like someone told me to do this, but like hey, what's up? Oh my God, I love you. I'm so happy for you. Like, you're such a nice person. Yay. It was different.
And I feel like that phrase, like that idea of loving yourself and the phrase of self-love, it's come a long way. I kind of wanted to tell you the first time I ever heard it, and I mentioned this on one other podcast, but it was Danielle Laporte, Firestarter Sessions, listening to the audiobook with headphones. I was doing something, and she has this really husky, like,
Right.
sensual voice. I described it once as like her tongue in my ear, kind of, because she's like right there up at the microphone, and but
Right.
and when she talked about self-love, I had no idea what she meant. I thought she was talking about masturbation. Because I'd really never come across the idea of loving yourself sort of wholly. You know, I thought, oh, is that what this book's about? Like, and then as it went on, I realized there was more to it. But I know before we clicked record, you were telling me that you were having Facebook ad problems because using terms like self-love, they thought that it was pornographic.
You know, yeah, I don't know why. It was so bizarre because the pictures are all like, that's like me with, they're Timothy's pictures, like me with balloons. I'm wearing a Peter Pan collar, so it's like up to my neck. I'm wearing a tiara. Like I look like a kid. The language is it's my free program, Express Your True Self. Like everything is so PG, and it got kicked back to me, and it said something like, like there's nudity or too much cleavage, and you can't sell adult products on Facebook. And I was so upset that I literally, I think I was having a panic attack. I'm usually very calm, and I was like, oh my God, this is like, they think I'm in porn. Oh my God. It's like, because to me, with where I came from, it's like, that's like my biggest nightmare, is like, oh my God, it's like, that's not what I'm selling. I am not selling that. And then, I appealed it, and they wrote me back, and they were like, sure, no problem. Like it must've been a glitch. Like there was no reason really. They couldn't explain why it happened necessarily. It just, they fixed it. But it was such a fascinating study of all of that, and the shame we feel. And, the more I do this work, the more I'm taking it in that direction, because I feel like you said some things that I want to think about, like 1/3 of women have to come to terms with the fact that they face some sort of abuse or assault. And that's real. I did too. And that's like a massive thing. And that's something I know about. And it's one of the missions that I have, is to sort of clean that up and to go in there and say, hey, you know what, that, like, number one, we need to all figure out that, like, none of this is our fault. Like, we don't have to take onus for this. We don't have to hold on to it. And we don't have to feel like we need to be ashamed anymore. And so that's sort of where all my pieces, that all of the different facets come together into one person, because I know so much about that. And it does bother me that you, and even that, I said to one of my coaches, I said, gee, I was just so upset that they said that I was inappropriate. And she said, and is there something wrong with being inappropriate? And I was like, well, no, but I grew up being told, like, you're not supposed to say those things. You're not supposed to be inappropriate. And my inappropriate was like just wearing a t-shirt. And someone saying, that's disgusting, cover yourself up, whatever. So I think that there's so much for us.
We get so much shame, so much weight of shame.
We could do like 25 podcasts on
I know. We've already got almost an hour, which is longer than I usually do.
I know. We're long. I talk too much. No, I talk a lot. I share great information.
Yeah, it's great.
But yeah, and so that's what I'm taking away, is like, okay. And it spills over into everything. And I think it spills over into, because this is a podcast about money, right? That for some reason we believe that, we're not as valuable when you take away our bodies.
Mm-hmm. And I think we also take debt very personally, a bit more than a lot. When men make business investments for their business, I don't think they have that, like, I don't know, like you were talking about, like, I was sold a bill of goods. I'm gullible. I got taken advantage of. I don't know. I just feel like when I talk to women about debt, it's so much more personal. Like we take it as part of a detraction of self-worth. Like, oh, I'm worth negative $60,000 now, or negative whatever, which you don't do for your mortgage. You don't think your house is worth negative whatever you owe on it. It's that, your house it takes care of you. You live in it. But
very interesting. I will be tapping into that some more as well, because I think that goes all the way back to Eve and like the story, and
Us being blamed for so much. Yeah.
fascinating that we would have that negative space. And I think that, just to like tie it up in a nice little bow, it's like basically this, like the gist of it is this: if you have negative space, don't, if you have negative bank account, if you have negative feelings or whatever, don't run away from it and don't try and cover it up. That's like the worst thing you can do. Like literally sit in it and be like, cool, okay, now that I have this negative space, what am I going to fill it with?
And that's a good way to look at it.
Yeah. And that's financial abundance in a whole nother way. And it works. Like I've done it. That's how I did it. And it changes everything, because then you're in control, and it's not a detractment, like money, all of that. And it doesn't define you, but it's a nice reflection of your value, I think.
Well, awesome. Thank you, Katie, so much for coming on and sharing so much of your story with us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. My pleasure.
So if people want to find out more about you, how to work with you, where can they find you right now? And what do you
the easiest thing is just go to lovingtobeme.com. Everything is there. There's like a nice big homepage, all the goods. There's like
nice photos.
Nice photo. Yeah, the video is there. The video we talked about is there. There's, opt-ins for the free Express Your True Self is like right on the front page. That meditation I was talking about, the Well of Love meditation, that's on the homepage. So if you go to that lovingtobeme.com, you really it's all there.
And if anyone's really curious about your voiceover work, do you have anywhere where you keep track of like all the voices?
I do. That website's under construction right now.
Okay.
It's very old, but I think I have a SoundCloud account that's actually linked on my website to my old SoundCloud account. If you Google me, actually, I mean, if you really want to Google me, my acting website does come up, but it's out of date. And actually, if you look at it, if anyone does go there and look at it, you'll see sort of my journey. Like my website, there's like a smoochy kiss on it, and I'm all like, sexy. It needs to be updated, because that's so not me anymore. So don't judge me by my past. They're all our clips of things there.
Okay, I have to admit, I'm really curious about it, because I don't know, I listen to lots of audiobooks, I was telling you this before, and I love when the author themselves reads, because then you get to hear, what it feels like, what they're thinking. But there are so many narrators there are a few narrators that I buy books based on their narration, because I love their voice, and they seem to consistently do good books. So sometimes I actually buy the narrator first and then see how I like the book, which is a little backwards, I guess. But, if I really hate it when you get a book and I'm like, oh God, I have to spend 10 hours with this person. I can't stand their voice. Like, that's one of the worst. I would always sample before you buy an audiobook.
Side note.
Yeah. Because the voice is important. It's right in your ear. It's kind of like with podcasting. I think the reason podcasting is so successful these days is it's right. We usually use headphones. We put it right into our ears. We're driving, or we're walking, or we're on a treadmill, or exercising. And that voice is right there.
Right.
I mean, I think it is so powerful to hear people tell their own stories in their own voice.
Right.
So, yeah. So if you guys love this podcast and love Katie, keep listening.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Katie. And I will see you around the internet. It's been so nice to talk to you.
Interwebs.
Bye.